Welcome to the Made for Agriculture podcast with Adam, Cameron, and Emily. Today's hosts are Adam Jones and Cameron Horan.
All right, folks. Well, welcome to another episode of the Made for Agriculture podcast. My name's Adam Jones.
And I'm Cameron Horan.
And we're back today with our crack team of agronomists from around the state. It is August 16th, the morning of August 16th. And going to give a little crop updates this morning, or give some crop updates this morning. I know everybody's kind of getting close to the finish line. So figured we'd do one more of these where we're going to go around the horn and let everybody kind of chime in on what's going on in their area, some things that they've seen. And then we were actually just discussing before we turned the mics on this morning that there's a few things that we've learned from the 2024 season. And instead of waiting for the off season to kind of cover some of those, we're going to use the last few in-season podcasts that we've got scheduled to kind of cover some of those timely topics. So be sure to tune in to those as we record them over the next few weeks. So anyway, this morning, let's go ahead and kick it down to Kevin Moore there, who covers North Missouri for us. And Kevin, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So the last, it's been a few weeks since we've talked and got together on this. So across North Missouri, we did in between podcasts, we did have a pretty hot and dry spell. I think that was actually starting around our last podcast, especially the western half of the state, at least in the north. It actually had made the colored in the drought map there towards the end of it. But we did just start getting rains. A lot of the tougher soils, the corn really started to give up in some areas. We're not talking about whole fields, but just the tough spots in fields where it seems like a lot of the rest of it did hang on. Anyways, we did start to see some corn turning brown, ears hanging early, stuff like that. But once these rains came, that kind of stopped it for the rest of it. And I think it's gonna go a long way for a lot of these soybeans. From what I can tell, most of the soybeans had hung on pretty good. We didn't have a whole lot of pods dropping off or aborting yet. So I think this last rain is gonna go a long way to just let the rest of the corn finish up naturally and help those beans finish up. We did find, I guess in northeast Missouri, it was confirmed that there was some red crown rot in soybeans. I try to remember if that might have been after the last podcast.
Yeah, I think it was, Kevin, and you're teasing one of the topics that I wanted to make sure that we covered before the end of the season here. So that's great.
I won't ruin it too much, but it was confirmed in northeast Missouri. Craig Russell found an area that was suspect in over around King City and Gentry County this week. Mandy Bish actually came up yesterday to look at it, and she wanted to take some samples off before she confirmed it visually. So it's up in the air, but it seem to be suspect. So we'll keep everybody posted on that. So we may have another case of it on the other side of the state. It's kind of weird. All the new stuff that we find, it happened with tar spot. It happened with southern rust this year, and then possibly that where we see it at the northeast corner of the state, and then the next thing we know, it's clear on the west side, and then everything kind of seems to meet up in the middle. But anyways, that's a possibility there. We've seen some other soybean diseases too. A lot of it due to the wet weather early. There's been a lot of cases of Phytophthora, root and stem rot showing up late. SDS is starting to show up in places. Fortunately, where that showed up, the beans are quite a ways along into pod fill. Last year we had SDS showing up really early, and it caused some pretty big yield losses. When the foliar symptoms show up late, it's not as devastating, but it is here. It's around. So, and then far as corn goes, tar spots everywhere now. We're talking earlier before we turned the microphones on how just the night and day difference of fields that had a fungicide on it compared to fields that didn't. But that's certainly something we already knew it was going to be here to stay. But this year it's confirmed. I'd be surprised if there's a cornfield in North Missouri that doesn't have it.
Yeah, that's kind of been my experience too, Kevin. And like we were saying before we turned the mic on, you expected, I guess, it to take a couple of years to build that inoculum up to where, it was a big enough deal that it would really cause that much yield loss, but it did not take us but 1 or 2 years. It didn't seem like to build that inoculum up, to where it's a pretty major player. So
other than that, I guess I was just going to mention the corn. All the corn that was planted in April, the milk line's about halfway down. The crop that was planted later after the first round of rains that were getting mid to late May, it's catching up. A lot of that's starting to denting or about to dent. So, anyways, that's how far along we are. Anyways.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you, Kevin. All right. So we're missing Scott Wilburn this morning. I'm sure everybody will miss his stories from the late 90s, but we've got a great replacement in here for him. So I'm going to kick it down to Taylor Nix. So Taylor, since the first time you've been on here, I'm going to force you to do an introduction before you get started as well. So Taylor, take it away.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, I'm Taylor Nix. I cover the Boonville, Glasgow, Salisbury area, so heart of Missouri. I'm the local agronomist there, and I'm filling in for Scott, like Adam said. So in our area, we're pretty well finishing up our spray applications on our double crop beans. We had a couple fields that got a second pass, which isn't always ideal, but just with the weed pressure this year, kind of what we had to do. We're continuing to see SDS in fields. Early planted, wet planted fields are getting pretty severe in places, but like Kevin said, far enough along R5, R6, where we're probably not going to see huge yield impacts from that, but we could see some. Continuing to see Phytophthora kind of in small pockets, more where low, wet spots in fields. We keep every week seeing water hemp coming up over fields, and after we got this rain, we'll probably start to see more come up. They're kind of just below the canopy right now as I walk fields, and with a little bit of rain, they're really going to put on some growth. So we'll keep seeing that. As far as corn goes, we're between about 25-50% milk line now. Corn has really started to turn in the last few weeks. As you drive down the road, you can really see that. We have tar spot pretty severe in the fields where I caught tar spot early. They've really started to shut down now. Far enough along where we're probably not going to see yield impact. We protected it during the crucial grain fill period, but we could start to see some standability impacts. I'm already kind of seeing some corn that's falling over in places and green snapping, and so my kind of theory on that is we're just going to have to be efficient with harvest and be in contact with our crop consultants and know which fields have poor standability and know which fields have heavy tar spots, so that way we can get into those fields first and kind of be efficient with harvest and kind of have a plan for when the combines start rolling. So other than that, things are pretty well wrapping up.
Yeah, great. No, that's an awesome point you bring up, Taylor. And I think something that we maybe haven't talked about on the podcast too much yet, but we've got a whale of a corn crop standing out there in the field. And I don't know what our elevator capacity is going to be in places this fall, but I can tell you that we're going to fill up in places. And that's a good point that you bring up on evaluating. I mean, there's going to be some corn that gets stored in the field, I feel like, this fall because we don't have anywhere to go with it. And just that's a great point you bring up. Make sure that if you have to do that, you're choosing, the right field of corn to leave out there for an extra few weeks until you got a place to go with it. So it's a great point.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, let's kick her down to, I guess, Shannon or Jesse. I guess you guys can argue about who's further south. So we were supposed to go north to south, but
Jesse's further south than me.
All right, I'll let you go next then, Shannon.
Yeah, so I guess since our last one, which I guess was 4 weeks ago, kind of the same dry spell that Kevin talked about, we experienced as well. Ours started a little earlier than his, so we had a month and a half there, really since 1st of July, where it's been pretty dry, which has definitely had an impact on some different things. Corn harvest on that first planted corn has started this week. Way too soon to know what we're looking like, but just from the numbers I've been hearing, we're not going to have a whale of a corn crop in our area. There's going to be pockets that's going to be pretty decent, closer to average, maybe a little above average, but there's also going to be pockets that are not going to be nearly as good, just due to some poor pollination, some things that we already knew about, that we were expecting coming into the fall. So as combines get rolling, we'll have a better idea of how widespread the bad conditions actually were. Soybeans, our first crop beans, they're kind of on the back burner. They're later in of seed fill. There's really no applications we're doing to them. We're just waiting for them to do their thing. Double crop beans, they are flowering, R3 essentially. So fungicide, insecticide applications are being done on the beans that look good. There's some pockets where, those dry areas where the beans haven't gotten very big, haven't got over the wheat stubble even. So there are some that look pretty rough, but there's also some double crop beans that look really good. Here over the last 7 days or so, we've been catching about a daily rain in places. So that's going to be good going into the fall and get those beans finished up. So those beans are getting taken care of. We were talking about stink bugs early on. That's a typical pest that we see, that we actually are seeing more of this year than we normally do. There's a few pod worms and green clover worms and bean leaf beetles, but it seems like the stink bug pressure is our main pressure this season in the beans.
Yeah, good stuff. Not some of the same stuff that we've seen, Shannon. So appreciate it. All right, Jesse, I think we've gotten there. So you can give us a report for down Southeast Missouri.
Okay. No, for us, our earlier planted stuff, we're looking at harvest is just kind of getting started in the corn. No good real numbers. A lot of it's wet, but a lot of these guys just like getting started early, so they'll dry it down. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around it. $3.90 corn, or why you'd want to spend money drying it down, but more power to them. And then with our rice and corn, our rice and beans, we always desiccate some, and guys get started early. So that's been going on this week too. I'd say it's going to be another 10 days before we're to that really geared up and going hard. I ain't heard no solid numbers on everything, but everything sounds like it's going to be pretty good. So that's good. As far as what we got going on in the crop, outside of this early planting stuff, we're to the point where we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're just getting it to the finish line. A lot of our corn, we're just waiting for it. That's late is just getting to black layer. We can't see the milk line. It's just got to get another week or so into it. The beans, most of our early beans are pretty well done too. We got some double crops. We got a few things going on in them. I feel like I've been talking about fungicide for 2 months now and warning people about southern rust and trail guy. And like we said earlier, it's you can see the effects if you didn't do it. In general, we don't normally fungicide our double crops just because we don't like them hanging on so green. I know that agronomically and a yield wise, that's not the best idea, but wet falls, we don't like doing that. But we got some frog eye and some double crops that are bad, that we're going to have to if we want to keep our yield up there. And that just we've been seeing frog eye for a long time, but it didn't blow up till this week. So I guess anybody north of me, just beware. If you got some double crops, keep an eye on that. A little bit of SDS, like Kevin said. The insects have been hit or miss. I mean, we got some beans that are R6 and the blister beetles are just eating them alive, which it's not worth spraying, but it's just odd how they come in so late. And then some pockets of some stink bugs that we're having to spray still. And just remember on stink bugs, like they can still do damage out to R5. So keep that in mind. And then I don't know if it was last year or the year before last, we had a lot of talk of deck T stem borer that come in. I sit here and thought we were going to have a year where we didn't have that. And the last 10 days, we're seeing a whole bunch of it come ahead. And just remember, deck T stem borer, there's literally nothing we can do about it. Just kind of their life cycle, how they hatch, how they get into the bean plant. And what to do is they crawl up the bean plant and burrow in the inside, and they basically eat the inside of it, which kills it off. So you'll just have big spots out there that start looking drouthy, and then you'll come back next week and they'll be dead in the door now. So with them, I mean, it's all about time they harvest. Care of those. Outside of that, that's about all we got. We're just trying to get to the finish line.
Sounds good. Yep. No, I like I said, I don't know if you ever trust social media. I guess I'll leave that for a different podcast. But I have seen some harvest stuff from down in the Delta starting to pop up. So I knew there was some guys maybe starting to run some corn. I assume that'll pick up if you guys are at black layer down there.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't know if we talked about it last time, but the 3 weeks of 80-degree weather really slowed us down. Like, if we just stayed on the 95-degree days, 100-degree days, we'd have been full throttle by now. So
Yep. No, I that's agree. I agree. I mean, we've really kind of slowed down the GDU pump, over the last few weeks here with the mild weather. I mean, I guess I'll take it.
I think I ain't mad at it, but definitely.
I don't sweat well, so I guess I'll take the nicer weather. But anyway, all right, guys. Did anybody got anything else, or did we cover it all?
I was just gonna say, Jesse kind of touched on it. For the last, 6 weeks or so, we were really kind of amping up talking on fungicides and how southern rust was probably going to be really bad. I feel like today, for the most part, we talked about tar spot and the effects of what tar spot's looking like. I would say that, we've probably seen southern rust, but those fields that got fungicided are going to be okay. But I think Jesse mentioned those fields that we didn't get fungicided or we neglected to miss. I think you can kind of see an effect on some of those. So that's definitely going to have an impact, like you said, Adam, with the big crop that we have. Those fields that were neglected are going to see an impact from that.
No, that's exactly right. They're gonna deteriorate down pretty quickly. So, I mean, yeah, I think Kevin mentioned it as well, like seeing some ears drop and stuff like that already. I mean, that plant's done when that happens. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks to you all for jumping on here this morning. Thanks to Taylor for just to put it out to the world. We made her get up at 6:30 and record this podcast. So appreciate your time there. But thanks to everybody that's on here this morning. Thanks to everybody that's listening. And like I said, we'll be back in 2 weeks and probably do kind of an emerging diseases discussion. Talk a little bit about red crown rot, where we're at with tar spot, and some of those other things that we've seen and learned from this year. So tune back in for that. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you then.
Yep. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Made for Agriculture podcast, brought to you by MFA, your whole farm solution.